Hi everybody, welcome back. This is chapter 10, and in this video, our second video for chapter 10, I'm going to show you a demonstration problem very much like the lab problem that you're assigned, one of the two. And then in video 3, I'm going to do something like the second lab problem that you're assigned. So this one is about the various depreciation methods that you read about in the chapter and that I talked about briefly in video 1. So I kind of have it set up so you don't have to watch me write everything and make the template, and then I'll just have to erase the formula as we move forward. So this problem that I'm doing is at the bottom of 585. It's problem 1037B, and this again is on page 585, and it's January 3rd. It says Speedy Delivery, 2018, Speedy Delivery purchased a truck at a cost of $67,000. And that's right up here. I have a habit when I write zeros in succession, the last one doesn't get closed. I don't know why I do that, but I do that all the time. Anyway, excuse me. So they paid $67,000. Before placing the truck into service, they spent $3,000 painting it. Now, usually painting wouldn't be a capitalized cost, meaning you'd add it to the asset. But we're assuming the truck was so bad, in need of painting, maybe rusty and falling apart, that they had to really do it. Body work and paint. So that's what we're assuming here, because ordinarily you wouldn't add painting to the cost, because that wouldn't be capitalized, because it doesn't really, you don't have to have a freshly painted truck to use it. And the criteria for capitalization or adding it to the cost of the truck or any asset is being able to use it. But we're going to assume it really needed it. So we're going to capitalize the painting, the tires. Naturally, if the tires were no good, you would have to replace them. And this stands for engine overhaul. Very important as well. So these three costs that were incurred to get this truck ready to go out and do its thing, the total was $7,700, which can be capitalized. All that word means, it's a fancy word. All it means is add it to the cost of the asset and you can depreciate it, okay? So now the cost of the truck, where you're going to record it at, goes up from $67,000 to $74,700. And that's what we're going to use in our depreciation schedule. So that's very good, right? It's very good to have more to depreciate because you can expense it every year. So in the first requirement, which goes on and on because it's the 3 depreciation methods, starting with straight line, the one we heard about in Accounting 101 in chapter 3. It's the cost minus the residual value, right? Which is $74,700 minus $5,100, that's given. $69,600 is what we call the depreciable cost minus residual value over the useful life in years, and it's expected to last 5 years. That's just statistically. It can last a lot longer than that, okay? So they give you that information in the problem. The truck should remain in service for 5 years and has a residual value of $5,100. I'm going to skip the mileage they're expecting it to go each year until we do the next form of depreciation, the units of production. I'll talk about that in just a bit. So we're going to do the straight line now, which again is the one we were familiar with from 101. The only thing with depreciation in 101, they just told us what it was. We didn't have to figure it out. They showed us one example of it, how you did this, the formula, cost minus residual over useful life in years. They showed you one problem, I think it was also a truck. And then they just told us, depreciation for the year was this, was that, right? And it was so easy. Debit depreciation expense, credit accumulated depreciation. Never credit the asset. In chapter 10, and we'll see it in the next video, and throughout the chapter, you do get to credit the asset when you get rid of it, okay? When it's physically gone. So this is the first time we're actually going to see that, and that's going to happen in our next video. So first things first, we're going to do this depreciation schedule for 5 years, And this setup is going to remain the same through all three. So for the beginning, we start out at 1/3/2018. The depreciable cost is $74,700. Right? And the book value is $74,000. I'm going to see how neatly I can write. I notice I already went downhill, and that's because I wanted to stick that in there so you could see how I came up with the $74,700. So at the end of year one, the depreciable cost, oh, I'm sorry, this is in the wrong column. Okay, let me do a minor adjustment here. Just for the first one, I won't erase them all. I kind of, asset cost is supposed to be $74,700, so that's a mistake. So let me just put this. Depreciable cost is this, the $69,600. Okay? Cost minus residual. Here's depreciable cost. So I put that in the wrong place. Okay, these dates should be over here, but it's not going to matter because the asset cost only goes in the first row anyway. Okay, so the depreciable costs, we know what we get to depreciate is cost minus residual, $69,600. The rate of depreciation is 5 years, so that's 1/5 or 20%. When I learned to do this, we were allowed to use percentages. This book and many books now strictly do the fractions. It doesn't matter, it's all the same. So the rate is really 1/5 or 1/5 per year for all 5 years till it's fully depreciated. The thing about straight line, it's going to be exactly the same every single year. That's why it's called straight line. It's you can graft it, it makes a straight line on a horizontal bar graph. Okay, so this is 1/5 or 20%, and I'm going to say percent a lot because I'm just so used to it, but really it's the same. Okay, here's our depreciation expense. Accumulated would be the same, $13,920. So now our book value, and I'm going to be off my line because I came downhill. So let me kind of squeeze that $74,700 in there. At the beginning on 1/3, I'm going to put it small. That's supposed to be a 4. Okay, book value is $69,600 minus $13,920 or $60,000. Remember, book value is just cost minus accumulated depreciation. So here's our book value after 1 year. And again, my apologies, I came downhill a little bit, but this, what I'll do is this, just to separate it better for you. Okay, so now that was, didn't separate it well enough. I thought I was doing such a great job of this, but apparently no. Okay, let me just do this again. I'm not on my right line here. All right, so let's put this by itself. Go back to the big. I'll get better as I go along. Okay, so at the end of 2018, the same thing that I just wrote, but I'm going to put it in its right. I'm glad I made that line. It made me realize it wasn't really looking good. And then it's 1/5. So $13,920 is going to be every single year the same. Accumulated $13,920. Book value $60,780. And we're going to continue to do that for all 5 years. We're just going to fill in our numbers. Oh, this is much better, sir. Much better. Okay, so it's going to be the same thing. Bring the new book value over. 60,000, oops. I got the wrong number. How many times am I going to mess this up? I went down one. 60,000, no, that was right. Okay, let me bring that over. 69,600. Actually, I could have just put 1/5 for all of them. Let me try this and see if it helps me. It just might. In year 5, okay. Now hopefully I won't screw it up. Okay, so here's our second year, exactly the same, 13,920. Accumulated goes up to 27,840, and the book value goes down. You add in the depreciation expense to increase accumulated depreciation and then subtract it to get the new book value, 46,860. Notice how much the book value is coming down, right? That always happens. But it comes down evenly with straight line because the expense is always the same. So year 3, the same thing, 69,600 times 1/5 for the 5 years, 13,920. I can actually put that for each one because straight line. 13,920, and I'll do the last one. When you do these schedules, you always end up with the residual value because you can never go past it. You can't depreciate the residual. So now our accumulated is the 27,840 plus the new depreciation expense for the new year, and we're up to 41,760, which means the book value now, right, in the end of the 3rd year is down to 32,940. Okay, again, it's coming down evenly. Our year 4 in 2021, we add our depreciation expense for year 4, and we're up to 55,680. And book value is coming down to only 19,020. So really came down. The final year of depreciation, year 5, we're adding the 13,920 to the 55,680. We got 69,060. It's fully depreciated, notice. And what you end up with is 5,100. Always the residual value will be the last column, the end of the last column, because you can't depreciate it. So this is a straight line schedule. Looks a lot like the one for Smart Touch Learning that's in the book. Unfortunately, we have 2 more of these to do. So I'm going to change this now to units of production. I'll put U of P or Un of PROD. Exactly the same, except it's the useful life in units. Okay? So you have to get 1 unit and then multiply it by the actual unit. It's a very precise method of depreciation, and it's great for automobiles, trucks, machines that run by the hour, anything that you can count. It's excellent for mileage, especially. So, for the second one, we're going to get the useful life in units. And the units are the miles it's expected to go in total. And they give that to you. And it is 92,800. That's just a statistics for the type of truck it is. A statistic, yes. Okay, I thought I messed up the pronunciation. So for 1 unit, in this case 1 mile, it's going to be 75 cents per mile. That's our unit. Okay. If it was a machine, it could be the number of units it produced, it could be the number of hours it ran, anything like that. So we're going to do exactly the same thing, but this time we're going to use our new formula, and we're going to use the rest of the problem, and we're going to change the numbers. Of course, the dates are going to stay the same. Not as such a great idea as I thought, so I'm going to do this. Okay, so the numbers will all be different. The schedule is the same. Okay, so we're ready to start. Okay, so we're going to put our per unit instead of cost per unit here. So it's all going to be 75 cents. We don't have to do 1, 3. 75. 75. Okay, it's the same. And then we're going to get the actual miles that's expected to go. Again, they're using the statistics because it actually hasn't happened yet. So we have all 5 years, okay? And the number of units they tell us in the problem are 20,000 in the first 4 years. That's easy. So the first 4 years will all be the same. And then year 5 is 12,800. So I'm going to put that in. 20,000 for the first 4 years, which is kind of weird, but that's the way it is. I think in the chapter it's the same thing. For first year, or in the other lab problem it's the same. And then 12,800. Okay. These are what the miles they actually expected to be driven. So, of course, we're going to have 4 the same. So we multiply them out by the 75 cents. The only one that'll be different is the last year. So we have 15,000 for each year, up to 4. I'm filling this in because it's identical. And then in year 5, we're multiplying by 12,800 and we get 96. So we've got that all filled in for our depreciation expense for each year. Now we're going to do accumulator, which I'm sorry I kind of erased. So I'm going to put AD for sure, so I don't have to write the whole thing again. Okay, so accumulated in the first year, of course, is 15. The book value goes from 74,700 when we bought it down to 59,700. Then we have accumulated of 30. Oh, this is going to be easy to add because it's all increments of 15,000. Subtract it from the book value, 44,700. Okay. In 2020, it goes up to 45,000. I can't believe they made it this easy to add. And then our book value is 29,700, cost minus accumulated. And then another 15 for year 4, we're up to 60. So book value is going to come way down to 14,700. Yep. And then the last year we have 9,600. It's going to go to 69,600, which is the fully depreciated, the whole depreciable cost. Ending just like the first one with the residual 5,100. So this is the same schedule with units of production. Okay, there's one more, unfortunately, and that's double declining balance. So let's see. So let's call this DDB. Okay, and the formula for that is going to be 2 times the straight line rate. Okay, and not going to do residual value, but only depreciate down to it. So we have double declining balance, we have cost times 2 times the straight line rate. Okay? That's going to be how we figure it out. It doubly declines, it's the fastest, it's an accelerated method. So I'm going to get rid of these numbers. Of course, we're going to ignore the residual, but I'm going to leave that there because we're going to end up with it. These are going to change. I'm trying to do a better job, I'll leave that. You're going to notice the depreciation expense going up twice as much as with straight line, because it's 2 times the rate. It's going to be 40% instead of 20, or 2/5. And the book value is going to come down twice as fast. I'm trying to be neat, but kind of hard. Okay, all right. Kind of got rid of that book value, didn't I? All right, so this is our last method, and it's called double declining balance. So we have our 74.7, okay, to start with. So we still have that because, again, we're not bringing it down by residual. We ignore residual value for double declining balance. We depreciate right from the cost. So 74.7 times, it would be 2 times 1/5 or 2/5. 2 times the straight line rate. So already we have a much higher depreciation expense, $29,880. Okay. And that's accumulated. Okay. Book value, cost minus accumulated, already went down to $44,820 just after year 1. So you can see that's a big difference from the other 2 methods. So we're going to take that new book value and bring it over here to our, we're not going to call it depreciation per unit, we're going to call it book value. Okay, which we're pulling from over there. Our new book value, $44,820 times 2/5. And we have 17,928. That's supposed to be a 7. Better? Okay, so accumulated depreciation is up to 47,808. These numbers aren't so nice and round. The 74,700 minus the new accumulated of 47,808, all the way down after year 2 to 26,892. That new book value is going to come over here now to be multiplied by 2/5 times 2/5, and that equals 10,757. Accumulated now goes up again to 58,565. So we have a very high accumulated after year 3. Book values all the way down, 74.7 minus the new accumulated depreciation, 16,135. So it dropped considerably. In year 4, we're going to multiply the new book value times 2/5, and we get 64.54. Notice how depreciation expense is declining, right? And so is the book value. That's where it gets its name, double declining. The new accumulated is 65,019. The new book value, 9681. Okay. So when you're doing double declining, the final year is usually just a plug figure. You know you can't go past this 5,100. So you just have to subtract. That's all you can take for depreciation. Even though multiplying might give you more or less, it doesn't matter. It's you plug it in. So we're going to use our plug figure, 9681 Okay, we know we can only depreciate up to the 5100, so that would mean it would be 9681 minus 5100. It would be depreciation expense 4581. That's all we can take. We can't take that. That means it would come up to 69,600, just like the other two. And here's our end, 5,100. So you can see the numbers all look very different depending on the method you use. This method, the accelerated method, is used a lot because the depreciation expenses are higher at the beginning and lower maybe when the vehicle or whatever it is you're depreciating needs more repairs. So it kind of evens out. It's also a form of this called MACRS, Modified Accelerated Cost Recovery System. You don't have to know that, but that's what it stands for. It's used for tax purposes, and you have to use an accelerated method for tax purposes. Again, we don't have to do any of that, but it's mentioned in the chapter. So the last thing in this problem they ask is one more little thing that's fast. Happens to be requirement 2. It says they want to choose the method that reports the highest net income in the early years of use. Consider the first year that Speedy uses the truck. Identify the depreciation method that would give them the highest net income. Well, if they had they want the highest net income in the early years, they want the lowest depreciation expense. Because remember, you subtract expenses from revenue to get net income. So we're looking for the lowest. The lowest one was the first one, the straight line. With the straight line, of course, I erased it. But the depreciation was each year $13,920. None of the other ones had with the units, it was 15,000, right? None of the other depreciation methods had that lowest one. So straight line would be what they would choose to get the highest net income because that's the lowest depreciation expense. So you can see requirement 1 took all this time, and requirement 2 took a couple of seconds. But you would answer straight line because it was the lowest expense. Okay, and that's it for video 2, and I'll see you back for video 3 in a couple minutes.